Saturday, January 5th, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today I want to talk about the pointlessness of holding gold. That's not what I'm advising, of course. It's what the FT advised about 15 years ago almost, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Yesterday, the markets reacted probably as expected. We had some really big, how can I say, big numbers. Jobs number in the US came out a lot better than expected. The non-farm payrolls, unemployment rate though rose to 3.9. And then we had Powell come out and say, you know, he's going to be sensitive to the stock market, and the stock market rallied, I think, 600 points. Gold particularly got hit quite hard, went down to 1276. It closed around 1285 late yesterday. I think it still technically looks okay. Silver held on quite well. Am I concerned? No. Is it pointless to hold gold? I don't think so. And today I'm going to talk about the UK housing market, mainly because a lot of my viewers, of course, are in the UK and I'm in the UK, but it applies to every country, I would say, as well, what I'm going to talk about, and gold and housing. And it's interesting because yesterday we had some pretty negative numbers about UK housing. Nationwide Building Society came out with their monthly data for housing, and I think it fell. Yeah, it fell 0.7% on a monthly basis. Change seasonally adjusted, as you can see there, from November and December, down 0.7. And you look at that, you know, in the last 2 years, that's the biggest monthly drop. 0.7. So that's not a good sign. Of course, the press is probably blaming Brexit. I'm not too sure about that. And you can see the average house price, UK average house price, dropped to 212 to 281 pounds, 212,281 pounds. That's average for the whole UK. It's not regional. And before I go into the housing market and gold in the UK, I want to talk about this editorial from the FT. And some of you might know the story. I've talked about this before. But of course, I'm always getting new viewers and subscribers. This editorial was published in 2004 in the FT in London. And the story is, as most of you know, I used to work in the city of London. I used to commute every morning, take the 608 train from my station to London Bridge, then walk over the bridge to the city of London, to the office. I used to buy the FT and start reading it on the platform while I was waiting for the train. And I used to like turning to the editorial page for some reason. I had a glance at the front page and then looked at the editorial right away. And I saw this, going gold. The pointlessness of holding bullion continues to sink in. And at the time, 2004, I had gold for 2 years. I started buying gold in 2002, and I saw that, and I was like, what are they talking about? And I had to cut that off, that editorial. I thought it was at the time, you know, the term fake news didn't even exist, but that's how I felt about it. You know, they're just completely biased. They're talking rubbish, I thought. So it was an early example of fake news. And you can even see that at the time I wrote FT editorial, April 16th, 2004, price of gold that was roughly around $400. And it was roughly around 223 pounds, which hadn't been doing very well. When I started buying gold in 2002, it was around the same level, 220, 230. Gold was doing nothing. So in pounds. In dollars, it had gone up from about 320, 350 to 400. So this article came out, or editorial, and so I cut it off, and I even laminated it so that, you know, I would be able to keep it, you know, just to prove how rubbish. And it just goes to show that you cannot trust what the mainstream media, especially financial mainstream media, says. They have an agenda, of course, which is to keep this central banking fiat money system going. Am I against the City of London? No. The City of London could operate very well in an honest, sound money basis. And it did prior to 1914, prior to when we had a gold standard. Britain, you know, had the empire. London was the biggest, most important city in the world. So I'm not bashing the City of London per se. I'm bashing the system that we've got now, of course. Gold was 223 pounds. Right now, I think it closed at around 1,006 or so. On Friday, yesterday, it got up to almost 1,030 the day before. So we've gone up more than 4 times in pounds. In dollars, we've gone up not 4 times, but more than 3 times, right? So very pointless. So I'll just, before I go into the UK housing and how it pertains to gold and also fiat money, I'll read the last paragraph or so of this editorial. It says, given the pointlessness of holding gold, the speed of its official sell-off scarcely matters, unless leaching the gold into the market bit by bit somehow maximizes the return to the public purse by limiting the impact on the price. That would imply some irrationality on the part of the market. But then holding gold is irrational in the first place. Perhaps the central banks are right to go slowly. Whatever the speed, the direction is clear. Gold is on its way out as an investment and a reserve asset. 3 cheers for that. So if you'd listen to the FT and you had, let's say, let's say you had inherited just over 200,000 pounds and you kept that money in the bank until today, it would still be 220,000 pounds. But if you bought 1,000 ounces of gold, you'd have over £1 million, right? So that was quite pointless, FT. And with that as well, I want to say that we have a Maneco 64 Teespring store. And if you want, I have a FT fake gold news mug where you've got this editorial on it. At Maneco 64 mug. You can go there and purchase it. There's links below in the description. It's a bit of fun and it helps finance the channel a little bit. You've got Billy merchandise there as well if you'd like. So now, UK housing. I got a question the other day from one of my UK viewers about, you know, he told me how much he had in the bank, that he had an amount that he kept in the bank for almost 20 years. And he had some other money with a fund. And then I told him, you know, if you'd put that money 20 years ago into gold, it would be worth, you know, a lot more. And you'd be able to probably put a very good deposit for a house. And he said, yes, I realized that. So I just, and this is not advice, this is just to show, and I never like advise people, you know, you should buy a house now or sell it or anything like that. I just want to show people how things have evolved. And I've taken nationwide building societies data, and they have great data. They've got UK house price since 1952. So they've got this file. I downloaded this file, and I've done this before, and I did a little bit of research, and I wanted to look back at 1968, because it's 50 years ago, just over 50 years. And let's say you were a young person, like in your early 20s, and someone in your family died and left you, let's say, £10,000 at the time, which was a lot of money. And then you decided to just leave it in the bank. And now you're 70 or so, or 72, and you're retired and you want to use that money, right? To enjoy yourself a little bit in your retirement, but it's still £10,000. Well, what would have been the best thing to do, in my opinion, if that had happened? You know, in hindsight, it's very easy, of course. I would have said is to have bought a house in the UK and the rest to buy some gold. Of course, at that time, I think there were restrictions on how much gold you could buy. So it wasn't that easy, but you could try to find a way to buy some gold. So what I've done is I look at the average house price in the UK in 1968. At the end of the year, fourth quarter, it was £4,089. So yeah, you could have bought a very nice house, average house, you know, young. And with the other, you know, the 5,000 or 6,000, well, let's say you had £5,000 left after all the costs, you could have bought some gold. So we'll go back to 1968 and see where the price of gold was, right? And I've gone to the, I know the LBMA is a bit of a dodgy institution in my opinion, but they do have the data. So in 1968, the price of gold was around £17. So you could have taken the £5,000 divided by 17. You could have bought 294 ounces, or let's say 300 ounces, which today would be £300,000, right? And your average house, which was £4,089, let's say you paid $5,000 for it, would be today, according to the nationwide data, average house price for the fourth quarter, £214,000. So you would have done you would have done very well. You would have bought a, you know, protected that £10,000. But if you'd left that £10,000 in the bank, what could you do with £10,000 today? Maybe buy a used car. There you go. Buy a nice holiday, a very nice holiday, maybe for a family of 3 or 4. But if you'd taken your inheritance in 1968, bought just a nice house, average house, and bought some gold with it, I mean, you probably would have sold that house in the meantime. You'd probably have an even bigger house. Probably your house would probably be even worth over $1 million, and you'd still have 300 ounces of gold, which is like £300,000. And you might say, why wouldn't you have bought 2 houses? Well, for tax reasons, there's no capital gains tax on houses in the UK or primary residence. But if you'd bought another house, you would have had, if you wanted to liquidate it, you would have had to pay capital gains tax on that. With sovereigns, there is no capital gains. So that's what I'm trying to say here. The pointlessness of holding gold, right? The FT. So hopefully that answers, my viewer's question. I did answer it already, but this is more elaborate. And I did a little exercise as well, just so people have an idea of how the value of UK housing right now in relation to gold, which is real money. Most of us agree on that, at least the people who watch my channel. So I've done a little bit of an exercise with the UK house prices from Nationwide Building Society and the price of gold. So I took 1968 average house price, $4,089, and then I took the LBMA fix at the end of the fourth quarter, which was £17.57. pence. So that equated to the average house price. You needed 232.726 ounces of gold to buy that house. And then I looked at the major kind of resets, if you want to call. And the first one was in 1980 when gold spiked in dollars and all the other currencies. In pounds, it spiked to 371. And that was in January 1980. And in the first quarter of January, the average house price in the UK was 22,677. So that was probably the best trade then, in hindsight, was to sell some of your gold or all of it or whatever and buy, you know, a house, because it only took 61.1 troy ounces of gold to buy the average house price instead of 232 in 1968. So in 1968, I would say gold was undervalued against the pound. And then I looked at September 6, 2011. That was the last time we had kind of a reset in the gold price. And you can argue it was a reset because gold spiked all the way to 1900 and 1182. That was the highest fix for gold in pounds. And the UK average house price was 166,597. And it took 140.84 troy ounces. Still a little bit overvalued, but a lot less undervalued than the 232. And then now, if we look at the price of gold, the recent close, 1,005 pounds, and the latest data for average house price, 214,178, I come to about 213 ounces. Which is less of what it was in 1968. And don't forget, 1968 was about the time when the bankers, the central bankers, were having a difficult time keeping the price of gold at $35 an ounce. And 3 years later, Nixon had to close the gold window and prices spiked. So I would argue that right now, the price of gold is, compared to real things, and a house is what is more real than bricks and mortar, right? Compared to that, I think it's still undervalued. And I would say, you know, if we get back to 61 troy ounces to buy a house, then I would say that's a good level to get into property. Definitely, if you have gold. Am I saying you have to wait till then? No, I'm just giving you an idea. It could get back to 100, who knows? And how could that ratio go back to 61? Well, two things can happen. One thing is that the price of gold goes up quite a lot, let's say 3,500 pounds, and the house prices remain the same. Then we get back to 61. Or we could have gold stay where we are, 1,000 pounds, and how prices crash, or a bit of both. House prices go down and gold go up. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Hopefully that will help people. I'm not advising people on housing, but just giving them an idea of historical values against real money or gold. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up, share it far and wide, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and you can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter. I wish you all a great rest of the weekend. Take care. Bye.